Alright, so I'm not happy with the performance of that motor. So I'm going to change it out with a very cheap winch, but I'm still going to use my little controller simply because I don't like the cheap controller that came with the winch. I have a feeling I'm going to lose that little tiny remote, and that's just going to drive me nuts. So I'm going to redesign some of this, but for the most part it's going to stay the same.
Let's go to living my day, waiting and waiting in the forest. You're an old rolling stone to roll over the hill. I had a good crime, you said good crime. I didn't want to let you go, but you've been too gone for too long. Now it's too late to come back home. baby.
Alright, so I've done a lot of modifications, some of which I got on camera, some of which I didn't. Now, let's do an overview. On the sides, you might notice that these 2x4s aren't square, and that's on purpose, so they're angled so that the, let's see if I can point, the 2x4 is going this way when it's coming up, can have some slop, and then this 2x4 guides it in. Now, these 2x4s are longer than the cut in the OSB, and that is so when the winch pulls up the platform, it stops. Just a little feature. And then on each corner, I have a little latch, bolt latch, and that's just for some crazy reason. If the cable rots or snaps or something, this thing doesn't come falling down on somebody's head. I already undid them so I can demonstrate that the lift comes up and down and how it does that. So let me put this on the tripod and continue. Okay, so other things that I've done, just like the other 2x4s that look incorrect, these are also tapered, well, tapered here and screwed in from up underneath, and that just does the same thing where it has a little bit of slop room, and then as it raises up, it just glides right on here, up against the sides of the trusses. Now up here, yeah, you should be able to see that. I have a pulley, two pulleys, well, okay, four, that connect these guidelines up to a pulley on each corner. Yep, and then up on the top, I have a 2x4 and a standard car winch. That way it runs on the same 12 volts. And then I have two pulleys there, only one lag bolt holding those in. And something important to note is, let me see if I can, oh boy. Alright, so when you're attaching to a truss, what you want to avoid is making connections down at the bottom and up at the top. The reason is, well, I could go into which boards are in tension, which boards are in compression, but the rule of thumb is if you connect something in the middle, it's going to be a lot stronger and it's not going to really damage the structural integrity of your house. So always aim for the middle of the 2x4 or 2x6 or whatever you have in your trusses. Avoid bottom and tops. Depending on where, which board you're doing, it could be different, but the rule of thumb on all of them is if you go in the middle, you'll be okay. Now back to what's going on up here. The winch actually doesn't have too much, well,
actually the winch itself doesn't really pull anything. It has no force overall, no forces left, right, up, down, forward, backward. Everything gets canceled out. So I'm not too concerned about that, and that's just because you have two cables pulling in one direction, two cables pulling on the other direction, and all are pretty much the same tension. Sure, there are going to be variants between them, but overall it's fine. The pulleys on the sides, how there's two pulleys there, two pulleys there, those have a little overall tension going down, but not much because the angle's pretty, it's a pretty flat angle. Most of the weight are on these pulleys right here. So those are the ones that you really want to stick in the middle of the 2x4 on the trusses. But anyway, so overall, this thing's pretty good. I use the same wiring method as I did, I just recycled it from the chairlift motor. And this motor, since this is what it's designed for, it works a lot better. I just had to do very, very slight modifications to that. And then the other modification that I made, you can't really see it, is the power supply up there. I added a cord with a ground because I like, if it gives you an option to ground it, you better ground it. So that's the overall system. Now, it's a little flaky. Oh, and I mounted this switch on the wall here just so there's no question on where it is. I might do another switch where you can just grab the switch and move it around, because every once in a while this thing, because the box isn't perfect, it's kind of top heavy, it wobbles around a bit. But let's see how well it works today. As you can see, it's a little inconsistent, but all right. Alright, and then that's good enough for me to get the bolts in. It's like a 50-50 shot on this, and the reason I think is because I put more cable on the winch than is necessary, because I wasn't sure if I was pretty positive that the winch was going to be able to handle the load on, well, I was like 99 point something percent sure that it was going to work just fine, but I wanted more paracord than needed in case I needed to add pulleys to reduce the load on the winch, which I didn't need to do, but so what's happening is, because it's so much more cable, as it winds up, if it doesn't wind perfectly, one side can get bunched up, which makes the can't talk today, diameter larger, which makes it where one side rises faster than the other, which I can fix that by just shortening the cables, but I don't know. I think I'm done with this project, and I might do that next Christmas, because I don't want to just keep lowering and raising this thing. I'd like to finish cleaning my garage, which you might have seen in the other video. It was worse, it's getting better, but it's still very bad. So, but that's you've seen my workbench, so there's no surprise there. You knew you knew what you were going to see. I just can't talk today. So there you have it. Alright, well, in case I didn't mention why I decided to get rid of this thing weighs a ton. And it was really hard to mount on the wall over there. And even when I had it partially mounted, I didn't have it perfect because it was a video and I just wanted to try it out. I was not happy with the overall, I guess, safety of this thing, because, I mean, I didn't put the correct, I should have put lag bolts in it and stuff, but for testing purposes, regular deck screws worked just fine, but you don't really want a lot of tension force on those because they're, I think lag bolts are also hardened steel, but they're a lot thicker, so they're less likely to snap. I've never, okay, I shouldn't say that. I've only had 1 or 2 lag bolts snap. I've had a lot of deck screws snap, so not safe. This thing weighs a ton. Just an overall bad design, and it was so slow. I figured, okay, in theory, if I added 24 volts instead of 12 volts, it, in theory, would have been twice as fast. Induction machines don't work necessarily linearly, but essentially it'd be twice as fast, but even twice as fast is too slow. As my wife pointed out in the last video, she didn't even think it was moving while it was still raising, so... Oh, and this pulley, it's a terrible tensioning mechanism because the way they had it all lined up. And I busted my knuckle open just tensioning it, because straight from the factory, this thing was really loose, and it was always really loose. I had to tension this thing countless times at my grandparents' house, and it just, you can't tension it well, so it was never really tensioned correctly. Anyway, if you have a Harmer lift, I think that's how you say the name, just get rid of the damn thing. It's deadly. Oh, if you have any lift at all, actually, with a steel cable, get rid of it. They have geared systems that I have never had the gear systems fail. This thing, about once a week, the cable would jam up, and just don't get a steel cable one. If you see a steel cable and they're trying to sell it to you, just tell them no. And if you can't tell, ask for a instruction manual, like an installation manual, just to make sure that you're not going to get screwed. My grandparents, well, my grandma, she needed a new lift, and a lot of them, they just won't show you how it's being driven. They just want to sell it to you because it's cheaper and easier for them to do something like this, but they're going to charge you just as much, and it's a terrible, terrible system. I can't tell you how many times that my grandpa got stuck on these things, and then he's reaching over and grabbing onto the steel cable and rattling it and everything, and it was terrifying when I saw him do it the first time, because it's, you know, you're leaning downstairs, and there's a reason my grandpa was on this thing in the first place, and he shouldn't be doing stuff like that, and this thing shouldn't be failing like that. But anywho, oh, and I did reach out to Harmer, and I asked them what was going on with their lift, and they never responded, which was what I expected. But anyway, I said I was going to email them, and I did, but still nothing.